Hi, welcome to this Open Security Summit session in May 2022. And here we're going to have Jude Pereira talking about another really important topic, which is secure digital workspace. Over to you.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you. It's really a pleasure to be part of this Open Security Summit. And I'm here to speak about, secure digital workspace or secure remote access or work from anywhere, different kind of technical jargons that are being used. And I think the pandemic taught us a real good lesson of how we got to run our businesses and, how we got to go with our deployments using the best of breed of technologies. And at the same time, making sure that all of this is secure. So here to share my experience of what we've been doing the last 2 years. And since I found it is something unique and something different, it would be my pleasure to kind of walk you through, what we have literally deployed in different geographies, kind of in Asia Pac, Middle East, Africa, and now here in the UK. So to start off with, work from anywhere is no longer a trend, or it's no longer something that is of choice, but it's like a de facto, because Gartner predicts that 17% of workforce working remotely before COVID, and post-COVID you have nearly 70%. So from 17 it's shot up to 70%. You have 96% of workforce working remotely at the peak of COVID, and then Livermore said 74% of the workforce could prefer working from anywhere after COVID, and Denise is the best example at this point in time. So the important question to ask ourselves is, how rugged is our infrastructure that we've deployed, and how secure is all of that? So these are the two questions that we got to answer to top management, and we got to answer ourselves. So again, a little more depth, if you see remote work forecast by countries, and it's self-explanatory, and this goes on from 2022, as you can see the bar shifting up to 2024, where they predict that most of the countries would allow most of their employees to work from home or work from anywhere, as they say. So work from home, work from anywhere, fantastic, great. We've all gone through the exercise of deploying different kinds of products, different kinds of solutions. But the more we give access to our employees or to our vendors or to our third-party suppliers, the more the threats that begin to rise. And again, no brainer, no deep dive explanation needed. With all the work from home, there has been rise in cyber attacks during the pandemic. And one of the main protocols that got bashing is the RDP protocol, primarily because most of the organizations used VPN to connect to the networks or to connect to infrastructure. And again, I don't need to go into details, but credential theft, phishing, account takeover, general malwares, DDoS, web-based attacks, the top 5 no-brainers, whether it was work from home or standard infrastructure, the attacks just kept increasing. So what was the effectiveness of organizations, of the IT security posture? So if you could see, prior to COVID or prior COVID-19, 70% of the organizations felt that 71% of the organizations felt very confident with regard to their infrastructure and the security posture around it. Come COVID or post-COVID, that confidence level has dropped drastically, simply because from definitive infrastructure, we move to predictive or hybrid infrastructures, where we have different people working from different places, different levels of access, different requirements. And the reason for this drop in confidence is several. I will just outline some of them. Some of the main reasons is lack of physical security measures at remote user locations, use of traditional L3 VPNs, which most of us know has been the easiest to provision, but the most easiest to be attacked and vulnerable as well, simply because of several reasons. When you are connecting to the infrastructure using a VPN, your session literally terminates on that application, or terminates on that web server, or terminates on that ERP server, and there's no control over what you can do. So if the end user's PC is infected, by all de facto means, we have that traveling through the VPN to the data center, which could then open up windows of attacks. And at the same time, if the user was smart enough, all he's got to do is like an SQL injection or DDoS, or intentionally put a malware. And earlier today, we had one of the speakers talking about the insider threat is inside you or within your organization. So these are open, easy avenues that we allow these outsider threats to take control of our infrastructure. Remote endpoint breach, BYOD. So I'm sure we are all aware of all the different reasons of why this confidence level has dropped, and we need to work harder, smarter, better. Okay. So moving on to the next slide. Again, prior to COVID-19, we had users that connected to our data centers using LAN and private WAN, and all the applications were deployed on the endpoints. You had all the storage on the endpoints, and all this was like great and fantastic. So one approach for all, many traditional tools, and too much end user device dependencies. So whether this user connected from LAN or private WAN or came from internet, it was the same rule. It was the same definition of how he connected to the infrastructure. But as you know, through the entire period of COVID, all these dynamics went for a toss, as they say, or we had too many challenges. And to this day, I've not seen many organizations that have really effectively deployed a secure digital workspace or a work from anywhere solution. They're either in a LAN space or using too many traditional tools to achieve this, or too much of dependencies and on the end user devices still. And if you want to access the data center, then you've got this URL and these credentials. If you want to access the cloud, then you've got this URL and these credentials. And it's really a nightmare for the users at the end of the day. And at the same time, is the response the same? Is the effectiveness the same? Certainly not. Okay, so let's look at a closer look at the tools that were used pre-COVID for all the business units. Microsoft, the SCCM, you had antivirus, DLP, USB blockers, EDR, XDR. So these were all the solutions that were deployed in many of the organizations. Okay, whether it was internal web proxies, firewall, biometric authentications, multi-factor authentication that went through the roof, all these solutions were deployed. But even though all these solutions were deployed, the IT department was never worried about, what's going to be the size of the Windows update, or if there was any patching to be done, how long is it going to take, and how fast or how effective the bandwidth has to be, or how steady the network has to be. Then, the frequent AV updates that had to be there, the name resolution conflicts, the flexibility of allowing our users to have BYOD devices, internet inconsistencies, productivity measurements, collaboration tools. So all these things were not one of the overlays or KPIs to be really looked at. So therefore, most of all these infrastructures that we had built pre-COVID-19 failed us during this pandemic and even post-pandemic. So new challenges started to arise from allowing our users to work remotely or work from anywhere. So large number of distributed endpoints to manage different operating systems, the vectorscape, the large vector threats keep increasing. Not all traditional monitoring tools were able to monitor users that were directly connected or connected via proxy servers or connected via the cloud. Difficult to install security agents on BYOD devices. And at crucial times, even today, when you have top management or IT support, when they have to kind of attend any case or they have to do some troubleshooting, they have to in somehow or the other gain access to the infrastructure first to be able to support the remote users or to support any services being able to effectively deliver application delivery, service delivery, all the services up and running, cybersecurity, cyber resilience. So all these were a daunting task. Even to this day, I keep finding a lot of organizations still struggling to achieve all of this, or they are achieving it with multiple tools. Besides this lack of contextual access and centralized identity management. So again, the classic example I give you is even today when you see a lot of organizations, users accessing the infrastructure, you have one level of access or one type of access. If they need to connect to Office 365, they have another level of access. And if they have to connect to SaaS applications or cloud-based applications, they have a third level of access. The great question to ask IT departments is, at any given time, can you monitor effectively these users? From where are they logging in? How are they logging in? Which devices are they connected to? Do they have the right level of access? And are they really performing the right actions based on the privileges or based on the access given? Most of the endpoint security agents are signature based, which misses the new attacks. And there's the punch for the new kind of marketing that's all around the place, which is like EDR, and take it a step further, XDR. So a million malware solutions that have to be deployed. So when you look at our remote users today, more than effectively working or the performance being great, you end up having endpoints literally having 8, 9, 10, at times even 15 agents. And all you got to do is wish them all the best and hope that the network will perform and the security solutions are really effective. Then again, data copy protection is not built into all the apps. So it becomes very easy for these remote users, if they are smart users, to kind of right click, copy paste, share, upload. So a lot of data protection falls apart, even though you have the best of breed of security solutions deployed on the endpoints. And there's, of course, an imbalance between users needing the flexibility and the IT needing to be able to deploy security. And this gap and this challenge is only ever growing. So when you look at the flexible model and the patterns that is projected, as I said, it's only going to get a lot more challenging and a lot more difficult, because in order to have control and management, you got to have visibility. Now, that visibility is fantastic and great only if all your users are within your offices. But if you're going to have an organization like this, where you have 55% of your users hybrid, and the employee's office 15%, home office is 25%, and borderless 5%, it's really going to get very challenging to deploy the right infrastructure and effective security around it. So there's a need for a hybrid workspace. Okay, and this workspace has to be dynamic, it has to be flexible, and it has to be easy to use and deployable. And deployable, immediately, not something which is like a 6-month schedule or a 1-year schedule. So what is this hybrid workspace that we are talking about? So if you look at the different users within the organization, you will realize that every level of user needs a different type of access. So if you look at executives, they need to be able to access any app from anywhere at any time and from any device. They need to be able to access these apps even offline. And they need to have this access available on non-Windows compliant devices as well. When you look at your mobile phones, you look at your iPads, you look at BYOD devices, you have to be available. Access and effectiveness has to be, and performance has to be available for the executives. So the executives need a different type and level of access. Then you have voice users, where like how we have Zoom and Teams. If when the pandemic just hit us, we were able to connect to our infrastructure, but we were not able to effectively run voice-based applications like Teams, like Zoom over VPNs. There were a lot of performance degradation. There was a lot of performance impact. But then you have all these meetings that have to take place. You have all these discussions that have to take place. So you have voice-based users that need that level of infrastructure with all the security around it as well. If you have organizations that have inside sales teams, if you have organizations that have contact centers, you need to have that kind of infrastructure available to those voice users as well. Then beyond the voice users, you have the task users, those users that help in provisioning all the applications, whether they are web applications, mobile applications, all the CRMs, all the tools and services that are needed. And these users, they need access to these applications, but these access has to be limited. They do not need necessarily be able to have full access where they can download all the data, where they can edit all the data. They have to have full controlled, managed access again, just to perform daily tasks. So, see the huge difference with executives. You need to have full access, from any device at any time. And then we come down to the task users where we need to have limited access to only be able to access from this device and only these applications and with this level of access. And then you have the vendors again, which come in with their own challenges. And these vendors could be your suppliers. It could be your third-party vendors that help you to keep the lights on or to keep the infrastructure, up and running at all given time. And again, you need to provide them with limited access on limited applications. They need to always be turned on, and you should be able to monitor them at all times, who is doing what where. Very often, you would see that one of your third-party vendors or your suppliers, who's kind of Mr. X, and he's accessing the infrastructure from London, but all of a sudden, if he's not available, then he shares the credentials with someone else who could be in Europe or could be in the States, and then that person is performing the task on behalf of this third-party vendor. The question to ask is, do you have readily visibility that this swap was done, and now this vendor or a third person is doing the same task on behalf of this vendor? Okay, so this vendor access comes in with its own level of challenges. And finally, all the developers that we have, the full stack, open stack, they need full access because without giving them full access, it's kind of a mindset block or a psychological block, as I always say. And they need access to both the production environments, the test environments, the UAT environments. And that again can be a daunting task as to, first of all, to whom do we provide access, what level of access to be given, and the complete, again, control, visibility, management, and monitoring. So different user profiles need different user experience, okay? And at the same time, all this has to be secured. So this is the big challenge that is slamming most of our organizations even today. So first we spoke about the different access. Now, based on, again, the different types of users, they need to access different types of applications. Okay, so you have critical applications, you have legacy applications. So when you look at critical applications, most or some of the applications, or rather depends, I would say like a 60-40, 60% of organizations still have a lot of legacy applications. Now, these legacy applications need to be protected before they're given access. You need to hide these applications away from vulnerabilities and direct targeted attacks. You need to be able to separate them from endpoint vulnerabilities. So there should be some level of isolation or some level of sandboxing, and reducing application and endpoint management, which is like a nightmare 24/7 for IT support systems. Then you move on to private web-based applications, which is like within your intranet. You're still not public facing, or it could be private or it could be public facing. So the non-critical applications, they need secure access to the network. And the best way organizations feel that they're secure is by giving them a VPN and a multi-factor authentication. But the question I ask a lot of these organizations is, fine, you've given your users a VPN and it is tagged with a multi-factor authentication. But classic example I say is, like, if I myself, I was accessing my data center using my username and password, and I received the OTP on my mobile, and I've got access to the infrastructure. Question to ask is, if I share my username and password to someone else sitting in another part of the globe, or say, for example, sitting in Portugal or sitting in Italy, you give him the username and password, and you get the multi-factor authentication, you share the multi-factor authentication to him. The question to ask is, will he still be able to get access to the infrastructure, yes or no? Okay, and the de facto answer is, of course, you'll be able to get access to the infrastructure. So there again, you have the right technology in place, you have the right security in place, but it can be easily compromised. Okay. So again, when you look at SaaS-based applications, another classic example is Office 365. Most of our organizations have given all users access to Office 365, and it's clearly, blind eye to who's accessing Office 365, what the user is doing, what's the level of access, from where is he accessing, from which device is he accessing, is it a legitimate device, non-legitimate device, million questions to ask. Again, he could have the right credentials, he could have the multi-factor authentication and conditional access, but this is all what's provisioned. But what about the monitoring? What about the control? And what about the management? And then finally, the easy set is, certain access to internet for work from home users, and then blacklisting or whitelisting all the other applications or all the other services that are not really meant for these users. So I'm sure you would find yourself in situations like this where you need to provision the different types of access for the different types of users, and then the different applications that have to be provisioned to these users to access on a regular basis. So what we have to offer to all this is, for critical applications and legacy applications is like VDI based, because everyone trusts a VDI infrastructure, and it is considered to be one of the most secured way of accessing infrastructures. So you can, provision these users for critical applications and legacy applications, giving them VDI access. You can provision users that are accessing private web applications and non-critical applications using an access gateway technology, or the ZTNA, as they call it, the Zero Trust Network Access Solution. And then you have SaaS-based applications where you can provision these users using identity and access management. And also you can provision this access using a CASB, which is like a conditional access security broker. So regardless of whether this user is connecting to the data center, is connecting to the private cloud, to the public cloud, it is seamless to him. And as we carry on, I will explain more in detail, how seamless it can be to the user, and he need not really worry from where his applications are provisioned, whether they're coming in from the data center or they're coming in from the cloud. And finally, a built-in web proxy service within the solution itself that helps you to isolate all it helps you to kind of blacklist and whitelist and block social media apps or social media websites like Facebook. It helps you to block non-productive or non-organization based URLs, where the user is able to access only applications that are necessary for him to work and function. So all these functionalities are available in a single solution, and it can be provisioned as and when based on the different types of access and the different services or applications that needs to be accessed. Any questions? Feel free to stop me at any time. So when you look at the application delivery approach, which is very critical, there are two access that we are really fighting. The first level of access is the control, and the second level of access is the risk access. So when you look at applications that are being delivered by an IT managed team or by virtual apps, they are considered to be highly secure and highly the performance and the access is considered to be really great. Then you have the next level of access, which is IT managed and only VDI, which is again very easy to manage and very easy to control, and the level of risk is not that high, and it is still effective. So you have the level of control versus the level of risk here. As you go further, you have the next level of access, which is again managed by the IT department for Office PC access. Again, this is still effective to manage, effective to control, and the risk is not very high. But then it starts slipping out of control of the IT managed team, where now you have local apps on the machines or on the endpoints where it becomes very difficult for the IT team to manage and very difficult to have the right controls in place. Okay, so the control becomes a challenge and the risk keeps growing. And the same thing with local apps via VPN. So when users are connecting the infrastructure via VPN. So if you see, even though many organizations think that by giving access, VPN access to the users with multi-factor authentication and with all the security around it, they feel that the control is high and the risk is low. But literally, if you look at this graph, the access is like it's easy to access, but there is little or no control and the risk is very high. So when we build IT infrastructure solutions, deploy IT infrastructure solutions, and design and architect our networks with security around it, we have to keep these things and this approach in mind. If you go further, and if you look at the endpoints now, okay, the level of control and the level of risk associated with the different BYOD devices or bring your own PC strategies, once again, you see the curve. So you have a secured experience with managed devices using VDI or DRaaS, desktop as a service. You have, again, a secured device that can be managed with local apps, even though it's remote. But then you start losing control over secure apps and data on bring my own PCs or VDI and DRaaS, okay? And you further start losing control for bring your own PCs with remote control management that has to be deployed and put in place. The next is the risk. It becomes very difficult to monitor the risk of secured apps on BYO PCs using ZTNA networks. And last, the unmanaged PCs with local apps. So as you go to the different, so you see it's only VDI and local apps that really have full control and full, controlled risk. But as you provision the different types of access to the users, you start losing control and you start losing the risk. So what should be the approach and how can we effectively design such great architecture networks with security around them is something that we will discuss. So we help you have hybrid and compliant work from home or work from anywhere solution stacks. They are very comprehensive. They take care of all types of user profiles, as was explained, all types of application delivery approaches, whether they are critical applications, they are legacy applications, and all endpoint computing approaches. So whether it's VDI, whether it's local machine, whether it's DRaaS, all of that can be taken care of. The solution is integrated and simplified, very easy to roll out, easy to manage the change, and easy to monitor and control from anywhere. And the most important thing is cost effective. So I don't have to explain to you that if you have to literally deploy a solution stack for work from anywhere, you would have minimum at least 10 solutions in place, like multi-factor, VPN, firewalling, VDI, load balancing, anti-malware, DLP, blacklisting, whitelisting, and I can carry on. And you know the nightmare that you have on your endpoints at this point in time. So using our approach and using the approach of preventive methodology, we can just have a single agent on the endpoint that can help you achieve all of that we've discussed so far. So let's go further in depth to understand the architecture and the deployment ways. So within the solution, and the solution is ACOPS, okay? With all the experience that we have working and running, remote management tools and remote desktop tools, we have come up with a whole set of solutions that can be deployed for work from anywhere or work from home or secured remote access for all our dynamic users. And the technologies that have been offered is end user computing virtualization. And we'll go into depths of this in the coming slides. Zero trust based access gateway, strong identity management, and endpoint and hardware devices dynamically for BYOD or bring your own PC or connect anywhere, all the strategies that can be used. All these technologies are seamless. they come in one stack, and they can be used in a modular approach, or they can be used all together in a single license. Okay. The services that we help you is we help you design these rugged infrastructure. We help you to design and architect. We help you to plan. We consult, and we help you to deploy literally the work from anywhere solutions using your own infrastructure without really much change, giving you the best user experience, and enabling your level 1 and IT teams to run and operate literally from work from anywhere. So let's look at the architecture now. So what we really offer is a single one integrated solution suite, which takes care of all your remote access demands, which is VDI out of the box. So you really don't need a third-party VDI. It comes in with built-in multi-factor authentication. It comes in with built-in data protection and data loss prevention methodologies. It has got its own identity and federation management. It has got single sign-on built in. Once the user logs in, he is able to use the single sign-on functionality, so he does not have to, keep logging into multiple applications using different username and passwords. And then we can have the thin client architecture that can help us to literally connect to the infrastructure, literally from any type of device and from anywhere. Besides that, it also gives you the privilege to work from home or work from anywhere. It gives you the ability to control vendor access to only certain applications, which could be within the data center. So if you look at this architecture, you have your data center, but within your data center, you have your hypervisor or your HCI converged infrastructure, and we can literally integrate with any HCI platforms, whether it's VMware, whether it's Microsoft, whether it's Nutanix, whether it's Hitachi, any of it. So the ACOPS High Secure Gateway can literally integrate with your data center, with your HCI environments, and it can also integrate with all the applications and the services that you're delivering out of your data center. You really don't need any third party. You don't need Citrix, you don't need F5, you don't need VMware, you don't need the Zen Desktop, Zen app, all of that. You don't need all that middleware software at all. Seamlessly, VDIs can be provisioned from here, or access can be provisioned from here. And you can give the different users based on the level and the type of access you want to give him, whether it's to your data center environments, whether it's to your public cloud, whether it is your SaaS-based applications. You can give him VDI access, RDP access, or a secure remote access. And we can discuss in detail as we carry on. So these applications and these services that run on your different types of infrastructures can be used for work from home. It can be used to provision different types of vendor acts. It can be used for private application access, which only your employees need to access. Then you can also sandbox applications, which are critical applications. You can build your own sandboxing within the access gateway, and you can also have application isolation from the internet and from the endpoints. So you can have built-in sandboxing of these applications, and you can also virtualize the applications or publish the applications. So you can literally have an Office PC from anywhere. Beyond all these applications, you can also have voice that can be delivered over the same access gateway for use for all your users, regular business users. Besides that, you can have application delivery of all your applications. So if they are web-based applications, of course, need not to say, you can publish them directly using the HTML.5 access. You can publish them using the ACOPS High Secure Gateway, and your users can just type in the URL, the ACOPS publish URL, and they can get access. For other top management users, they can have access either to the applications, or they can have VDI access, or they can have direct access to the internet. All that is available seamlessly to them. For IT support, you can give them VDI, And then using the VDI, they can do all kinds of troubleshooting from there. So you can have a VDI to VDI session. You can have a VDI to an RDP session. You can have an RDP to VDI. You can have an RDP to RDP, multiple complex protocols that can be accessed seamlessly without having to have too much of third-party tools and too much of infrastructure in place. And all can be simultaneously accessed. So you can have seamless cloud adoption. So now no longer users accessing your infrastructure have to worry whether this service or this application, is it coming from my data center? Is it coming from the private cloud? Is it coming from the SaaS-based application? Because you no longer need to give them different types or different IP addresses, to access the different services. They're all published seamlessly via this high secure gateway, and it literally becomes like a single digital workspace for the user where it is all seamless. Your services or your applications can be delivered from anywhere. It can be delivered from your data center, private cloud, SaaS-based application, but to the user, he just sees one digital workspace where he can access all his applications and all his services at any time from anywhere and fully secured. So we also have the adoption of thin client agents. So if you have applications that are running client server applications or agent-based applications, even those can be virtualized using the virtual desktop or the application delivery or the application virtualization technology that is built in there. We also have special measures taken for BYOD computing. So because all the computing is done on the high secure gateway, you really do not need to give your users high-end devices like your i7s and your SSDs and high RAM. They can literally come in from Google Chromebooks, so they can come in from their mobile devices, and they have seamless experience because all the computing is happening within the data center and within the high secure gateway appliance. So because of this proprietary protocols that we have, because of which performance is improved and access can be dynamic, we are also able to help your users access high virtual graphic applications like AutoCAD, AutoCAD, SAP, Oracle, all your heavy applications that need heavy resources and heavy computing. All of that also can be published via the ACOPS High Secure Gateway. So again, whether it's voice, whether it's legacy applications, whether it's critical applications, it's high graphics, all of that can be seamlessly pushed through via this digital workspace that ACOPS helps us to create and helps us to push all the access to the end users. Beyond all of this, we also have internet isolation, which is very key and very critical. So you have government organizations, or you have defense organizations, or you have critical infrastructure organizations where they say that they're forced to, because of time and trend, they're forced to give their users remote access, but they don't want any of this access to hit the internet. They don't want any kind of internet traffic coming to any of these devices. And that's where, again, the ACOPS High Secure Gateway stands out, because we have another feature built in, which is the internet isolation, where even though this user, when he opens up his PC or his desktop or his mobile phone, he just, types in the published URL. And once he types in the published URL, we take complete control of the device. And there is no other application or no other services running locally on this device besides the applications and the services that are published via the services that he has to access based on his privilege and based on the type and the level of access that he needs. And finally, we have contextual level of access, identity federation, multi-factor authentication, and single sign-on for all the apps there. So we literally have a virtual digital workspace available to the organization and to the users. And all this is achieved using the ZTNA model, using ZTNA, the Zero Trust Network Access, and using virtualization. Now, to really deploy all of this and to be able to have visibility, control, and management, let's look at a deeper underpinning architecture. So what is the zero trust access model that we talk about? And this is something that is patent because we've literally not seen this with many vendors and many solutions out there in the market. So traditionally, if you see, all our users need access, and they gain this access using either a gateway, using either VDI, or using SSO, which is there in the data center. And what we use to authenticate these users is simply Active Directory, which is a username and a password, and they can get access to the infrastructure. But earlier, as I shared with you, if this user shares these credentials with another user, what do you think? Will that other user sitting in another geography or another location get access to the infrastructure? Of course, he'll get access to the infrastructure simply because all our authentication mechanisms are based on username and password. But with our zero trust network access model, we go beyond just plain Active Directory. Because with work from anywhere, the three critical aspects is all about the user, it's all about the device, and it's the authentication. So keeping these three in mind, let's look at the new way or the digital transformation in authentication. So beyond the standard Microsoft Active Directory authentication, and it's not only Microsoft Active Directory, we could integrate with Radius, LDAP, any third-party authentication protocol or system that you're using can be integrated here. But we go one step further. And what's the one step further? We have a contextual policy engine, which is based on artificial intelligence and machine learning, which gets deeper intelligence about the user. So now we know it's Jude who is coming in. Fine, he's a legitimate user, he's within Active Directory, but Jude comes in with what identity and what level of access or what role he plays within the organization. So based on the user, based on the identity, based on the role, he can get access only to these applications. And the rest of the applications are automatically blacklisted or whitelisted based on what we want to provision the user. So the first level of intelligence we have is the user-based contextual security. The next, this user having this identity and this role can access these applications only from this device. And this device, we can go not only based on type, which is like, a Dell laptop or an HP desktop or an iPhone, but we can, or, an IP, but we go way beyond that, and we can literally go to like, CPU ID number, motherboard ID number, RAM number, browser ID number, VPN number, geolocation number. Using trusted feeds, we can get his geolocation. So we get device type, device classification, and the amalgamation or the cusp of the user credentials with the device credentials. Once he passes through all these algorithms, only then the user gets access. But hold on, we want to use two-factor authentication because two-factor authentication validates both the user and the device. But now this two-factor authentication, when we enforce, is a smarter way of pushing the two-factor authentication, because this two-factor authentication will be effective only if the geolocation of the device and the geolocation of the receipt of the two-factor authentication, only if these two are met will the user get access. If not, he will be denied access. So a huge difference in the way we authenticate on a day-to-day basis versus the authentication mechanism that we use in this architecture and this design. You can either end your authentication here and give user access here, or you can go further to NAT-like functionality and literally scan the end user laptop or the end user device to make sure he's got the right level of updates, the right level of patches, the right level of endpoint control, the right level of endpoint management that is there. You can do that. Or you can also have beyond that, where you can give the user's access through a federated request. And all this is completely audited and you have evidence. So if at any given time a user says, I was not able to access because I was bumped off, you can easily know where, at what level did the user fail. If a user says, I put in the right username and password, but I did not receive the OTP, you have audited evidence that the OTP was pushed and where it was received or not received, whether it was delivered, not delivered. So this complete zero trust mechanism is fully audited and you have evidence. And I've got a couple of screenshots that we can look at later in the slides to validate that. So if you look at the ACOPS digital workspace that we were talking about, it has got zero trust based access gateway built in. It has got virtual apps and virtual desktops, and it has got strong authentication mechanisms. Now, when you look at the gateway, what are the different components that is there in the gateway? You have the analytic component, which gives us all the reporting and all the auditing. Then you have the VDI component, which helps us to give the virtualization aspects, where it could be, desktop as a service, or it could be a virtual desktop, or it could be virtualization of apps, or virtualization of applications. So all the virtualization functionality built in. It comes in with strong multi-factor authentication, and then the ZTNA, the access broker, which is limited applications where you can publish all the applications only using the gateway. So again, all this technology built into a single stack and a single virtual appliance. So this ACOPS High Secure Gateway, or this ACOPS High Secure Digital Workspace, is literally a virtual appliance within your data center, which can be deployed seamlessly within days and gets you all this robust functionality and features within hours. So let's look at the different use case scenarios that we can literally use this architecture. So we can use this architecture for straightforward, where users want to connect to the data center, to the public cloud, to the private cloud, and it goes through all these stacks. So you could have users that access via the mobile, where you give them only the access gateway, where you publish an HTML.5 access, and they need not have VDI, they need not have all the other functionality there. They can just get secure web-based access. Or you can give a laptop user web-based access as well as RDP, or access to his PC in the office. Or you can give top management a VDI access with all the functionality built in. So all that's possible within a single solution in a single stack. So if you look at the same architecture, you can have the ACOPS complete digital workspace in your data center, which then can be used to access your cloud applications, or it can be used to access your data center. So you can use this within your data center, or MSSPs can deliver this as a service to their clients. And the different services they can offer is desktop as a service, remote access as a service, and authentication as a service. And these are the services that I just explained to you in the previous slides. So it can be used as an organization for their own users, or it can be used by an MSSP as value-added services to all their enterprise clients, all the clients that they are managing clearly. And if you can see, this literally reduces the noise or the multiple stacks of technologies and solutions that you would have had to deploy if you didn't have ACOPS as a technology there. So it's not only about reducing the number of technologies that you would need, it's also about being able to control and effectively manage and reducing the cost to literally 1/4. So if you have to look at the modular approach of all the stack that is there, you have the secure virtual computing, which is the desktop virtualization. You have the ACOPS web browser, the virtual browser that is available, or you have the SaaS, you have the desktop as a service, office as a service that can be deployed. So all that comes under the secure virtual computing aspects of it. The ZTNA aspects is the high secure gateway. Okay, the strong identity is the identity management that we showed you. in that detailed slide, the multi-factor authentication and the built-in SSO that comes in. So this is the identity aspects. From the endpoint aspects, you can seamlessly have zero client and thin client architecture from any device. You can enable BYOD using the Nano, and I can explain about the Nano in detail. Or you can have MDM functionality for any device, literally. So depending, you can literally start by giving only the access gateway where you use the secured. So this VPN is not like a traditional VPN. It is a SPAN VPN, which is like a secure private access network VPN, which is not only working up to layer 3, but up to layer 7. You have layer 7 functionality. So it is a full controlled VPN with two-factor authentication. So you can either start with this, where you can publish, the HTML5 or the web access, or you can go for the entire digital workspace where all this functionality is available to the entire organization seamlessly. So just to give you a look and feel from the user perspective, how the users access it, you put in your, your company URL or your organization URL, you put in your username, you put in your password, and then you wait for the OTP. Once the OTP, so generate the OTP depending on the type of OTP that you want to generate. So it could be an SMS token, it could be a mobile token, it could be an email token, whatever it is. And then you sign in and you get access to your digital workspace. Okay, so you can see the hosted applications, you can see the hosted desktop, you can see all your web applications that you have privileges to access, and then you have the remote desktop applications as well. So this is more from an like an IT admin perspective, because they need all this functionality to be able to serve and to be able to work seamlessly. So this is the digital workspace that all your users would get a look at any given time. So looking at the delivery and approach, as we said, how it has to be done. So for the IT managed, for the VDI architecture, for the Office PC, for the local apps using ZTNA and local apps using VPN. So as we said, as the access and the control was becoming easier, the risk was getting higher. But now with the solutions that we have in place, we can help you manage that risk using the ACOPS High Secure Gateway, using the ACOPS VDI solutions. We can have better management, better control, and better visibility over your infrastructure there. And the same thing with the endpoint approaches. We can give you effective control of all your endpoints, regardless of whether they come in using the proprietary devices or non-proprietary devices. We have full control, visibility, and management of those endpoints. So what I'm trying to do is, if you see pre-pandemic, we were using all the PC computing, where the PCs had, and the desktops had all the endpoint security, the data protection, the backup, the desktop support, all that in place. And then you move to the digital workspace, where in your digital workspace today, you have the hardware and you have the operating system, but then you have stacks of other solutions and vendors that you need. You need a hypervisor from one vendor, you need a connection broker from another vendor, you need print management from another vendor, you need thin client architecture from a fifth vendor, you need remote access, and then you need strong authentication. So you end up having, and these are only few that I have mentioned, there are loads more that would be needed. But using the ACOPS solution and having a simpler and more cost-effective digital workspace, you can see ACOPS gives you all that functionality within a single stack of technology. And thereby, we help you to have faster rollouts, we help you to reduce cost, and we have reduced support and nightmares as well. Okay, so this is the ZTNA gateway infrastructure as a slide to depict that. This is remote users using ACOPS in a high security environment. So they come in. Now, again, this high secure environment or this connection that they're using is literally up from layer 7 to layer 4 and layer 3 access. The fast gateway is also used for VoIP. It has got contextual access. It has got multi-factor authentication, and you have complete control of the endpoint without having to have multiple agents. You can literally block the internet. You can block users from copying data. You have watermark. You have a clipboard. You can block clipboard functionality, dual homing. You can have complete control of the ports within the device. You can have lockdown for the device and network binding functionality. So huge functionality to be able to control the endpoints as well. Okay, another slide and a greater architecture for ZTNA infrastructure and the tunneling of the optional tunneling functionality that is built into the technology stack as well. So the key features for the high secure is secure application access gateway based on zero trust principles, secure application access gateway with SPAN, secured private access network technology and not the standard VPN technology for connecting to the infrastructure, clientless web-based application access, turbo tunneling, user authentication, authorization for user identity, auditing for logs and SIM integration, host scan functionality, device contextual, endpoint control and data protection, internet control, HTML5, RDP, RDS functionality, remote meetings. So huge, unique features that are all built into the product without having to say, oh, if you want this feature, you need this license. So if you want this, it's going to cost you that much. Okay, and that's typically what's happening, in the cybersec domain across all different organizations and across all different vendors there. So the same thing, deeper functionality with an Office PC access from home. So the users can access their Office PCs remotely, but tied down with all the multi-levels of security around it. Okay, and this is, the high secure turbo. In the interest of time, I don't want to really kind of go deep dive, but I can share this information given to you. So this session that is literally happening between the end user PC, which is like a BYOD device, and the infrastructure is like a locked, fully secured session using only certain ports and using only certain protocols. So it's a fully controlled, managed session that happens there. It's not a standard VPN that you're using to access the infrastructure. A little deep dive about the authentication and the two factors that is built into the solution. So the two-factor authentication solution is very effective and can kind of compete with the industry-leading solutions from Thales and Vasco and Secure ID and all of that, because the multi-factor authentication solution can be integrated with OAuth, SAML, API, biometric, and it can be also integrated to the different authentication protocols, and full integration and seamless integration available out of the box. Again, it can be integrated to all your, so you can not only use the multi-factor authentication built into this product only for remote access or work from anywhere or for users accessing the infrastructure, but you can literally integrate the MFA to any device, any application, any IoT, SCADA, any devices within your infrastructure. And you have loads of different types of tokens. You can have email token, SMS token, PC token, hardware tokens, fingerprint, facial authentication, voice recognition. And the beauty of it is each user can have a different type of token, but he's still using the same license. Unlike what we face currently, if you want, the licensing is either based on the technology that you're using or based on the user or the device, and it just becomes complicated. Here, it is seamless. One license that can be used for one user for any type of technology that he wants to use. So again, a summary of all the value of the multi-factor authentication that is built into the product. Again, in the interest of time, I'll just kind of skip that. High works for VDI. It can also be used ruggedly for VDI, and I'm sure you've got the gist of it as I kept explaining. So the VDI, again, we can work literally with any VDIs, any reputable VDI vendors, and it's all seamless and out of the box. And it can be literally deployed in any kind of hardware available there. So this is a slide showing you and depicting that we are even able to give users access for high graphics like AutoCAD and high applications using SAP Oracle, where all the computing is happening within the high secure gateway and within the data center. So that's why you really don't need to have high heavy devices at the endpoints for even accessing high graphics and high kind of consumption or utilization or applications that need high resources to be able to be published and used. You will not have performance degradation, you will not have load balancing issues, and you will not have any delays in accessing all these applications. A classic slide for VDI and Azure. Microsoft is talking a lot about the Windows virtual desktop. ACOPS even complements the Windows virtual desktops. So you can use the high secure gateway and the security functionality in your own Azure tenant, and at the same time have another tenant which is in your data center, which gives your users seamless access regardless whether they are accessing applications that are there in Azure or they are accessing applications which are there in your data center. So if you can see, you're using the Azure tenant, which is then connected to your data center, and it is seamless to the users. So you are kind of having the great functionality of both the worlds of your Microsoft architecture as well as ACOPS. So that can also be used in multi-tenancy environments. So ACOPS enables hybrid infrastructures. We clearly know about that. ACOPS can be used for lab environments, for universities, for trainings, for contact centers, for inside sales department, for operations within the banking environments where you have multiple tellers that all run on this OS infrastructure and the OS environments. So this is all the different use case scenarios that can be used there for high labs. And finally, we come to the Nano OS USB that I was talking about. So if you want your top management and they don't want to kind of carry rugged devices and they don't want to carry their laptops and desktops just to get secured access, all you can give them is literally a simple USB, which can literally be a standard USB. But once you deploy the Nano operating system on that USB, it becomes as good, as rugged as the different encrypted USBs that we have available in the market, which we spend literally 5 times the cost. So you literally have this Nano, and it is a cut down version of the Linux operating system, which is highly secured within this. And they can literally plug this Nano USB into any machine at any airport, at any public place, or any of their BYOD devices, and it emulates a full isolated session for these users to be able to remotely access the infrastructure without having to worry about any security breaches or any lapses in security. A full secure access remotely from anywhere. Okay, so there are also thin clients that can be used within this solution, which are way less cheaper, cost effective, easier, and multi ports and dynamic to use for the infrastructure as well. You have all this which are patented, and they've got all the whims and bells and whistles of any thin client vendors that are available there. And to summarize, why work with ACOPS? Because we are the work from home experts. We give you excellent user experience and management tools. We give you comprehensive offerings, balancing your VDI dependencies and your dynamic architectures. We enable hybrid infrastructures. We integrate data copy and endpoint control functionality for data protection. We offer compliant solutions for local regulations, and we provide a wide range of endpoint devices that can help you to have work from anywhere or a secure digital workspace from literally anywhere. And it's easy and faster for product customization to meet your business demands and rollout. So we exist to give the choice to our customers that they deserve. these are the different case studies I had, but I'll just quickly kind of go through them. Where for a bank we enabled biometric two-factor applications for their financial apps, and it was rolled out for 30,000 users for work from home and 60,000 users for multi-factor authentication. This was a government organization that rolled out the solution for 100,000 users. So I took these as examples just to give you the scalability the solution can really go to. This is for browser isolation for 25,000 users, so on and so forth. So multiple different use cases that have been used. And these are clients that are using the Azure stack to enjoy the flexibility and the functionality of both ACOPS and Microsoft. So your 10,000 users onboarded for work from home using the Microsoft stack there. That's it. With that, I end my presentation. If there are any questions, feel free to ask me.
Hello. Yeah,
Yes.
Are there any on the chat questions? Well, I think. No, this was a really great presentation. It's amazing the detail you went into, and it was really cool.
Thank you.
Cool. No, I don't have any questions from my side. I think as long as everybody has any questions, I'll start the recording.
Perfect.